Support this podcast via our Patreon and get more writerly goodness. Visit patreon.com/nanocast to join up.
Welcome to NaNoWriMo Every Month. My name is J. Daniel Sawyer. I'm the author of some 20 books, 34 short stories, and numerous articles and other things, and I am your guide on this journey to use NaNoWriMo to level up to professional output levels. Welcome to The Questions, Episode 67. Today, JR asks, how does one go about selecting the best cover for their books? I mean, the logistics of it, such as where to find the art, rather than which art to pick. Well, JR, there's a few places you can go. The first place is applicable if you're an artist or a photographer, and I don't mean a professional photographer, I just mean someone who likes taking pictures. You can go to your own existing stockpile of art. A great number of the covers on my books come from pictures I've taken, and only a couple of them are ones that I staged particularly for the book. Most of the ones that use my own photography use it in a modified form from something that I had just taken at one point or another because I thought it looked interesting. And it's a fabulous way to do it because you don't have to worry about rights clearances except for likeness rights if you happen to be using someone's face. And the chain of custody is very clear and very straightforward. So if you've got a repository of visual art that you own, that you can mine, that would be the first place to stop. The second place is staying in the realm of the free for the moment, looking at public domain artistic repositories, public domain and Creative Commons. Wikicommons is a good place to go. You can actually search by license on Google Image Search and on Flickr. The caveat is because people do sometimes change their licenses or someone may die and their heirs might go around suing people, when you get a piece of artwork or a piece of music or anything from a place that is offering it as part of the public domain or as part of the Creative Commons, you want to take a screenshot of the page you're downloading from that has the license there and file it away in your files where you would store normal licensing agreements. And if you're publishing yourself, you need to keep all your licensing agreements in a well-filed system so that you can reference them at the drop of a hat, because occasionally you will get requests from Amazon or other companies you're partnered up with in business saying, did you actually get clearance for X? And you can send them a copy of the agreement and say, yes, in fact, here is the license agreement, we're fine. They do that to check their liability if they're worried about something, which they get worried about from time to time. That basic mechanic for tracking the licenses applies to everything else I'm about to tell you. Next are stock photo sites like Shutterbug and Dreamstime and anything else like that, where there's art that you can license for commercial use for a fee. There's a tremendous amount of very interesting artwork up on these places. There's a tremendous amount of good photography. Now, the potential downside you run into with these places or with something from the public domain is that you may wind up with other people using the same image. There's two ways to insulate yourself against that. The first is you could buy an exclusive license. That's a lot more expensive than buying a non-exclusive license. But you can do it, and that will cause them to pull it off the market because you have the exclusive on it. The second option is to only grab artwork that you can modify in order to put on your cover. That way, if someone else is using the same artwork, the same shot of a model or whatnot, it won't really matter, because while if you look at the covers closely, you can tell that it's the same shot of the model. It's not apparent at first glance because you're using a different framing. You may have replaced the background. You may have retouched the coloring of it, and any number of other things, so that it doesn't just look like same old, same old. Your Photoshop /GIMP /whatever, your pixel manipulation skills are going to be your saving grace when it comes to making your book's cover art look unique and fantastic. Also, don't underestimate the ability of good typography to make a good cover, at least in some genres and some points in time. Next up the scale, and I'm sort of going up the scale from the least potentially expensive to the most potentially expensive. Next up the scale is places like DeviantArt and stuff like that, where artists sell licenses to their own work directly and are available for hire. Licensing something out of an artist's trunk is always less expensive than commissioning something directly, but in many cases dealing with artists directly is a little more expensive than dealing through a stock site, because people who deal through stock sites are dealing in volume, and artists who deal with the public directly are dealing in a boutique style of commerce. So boutique commerce is always more expensive than mass market. That's why it has its cachet. So that's the next step, is to deal with an artist directly, either through a place like DeviantArt or through the artist's website, or because you happen to know them and be a friend of theirs. And if they're a fan of yours, this can get really fantastic. This is one of the side benefits to having a good public presence and being approachable, if you've got the kind of personality that can stand up to that, because there's a lot of downsides too. You will get fans or friends who are really, really good at different forms of art than you are, and you can work out mutually advantageous deals. They may really want to see their cover on your books. You may really want to use their music in your podcast. This is how Danny Shade and I got partnered up. We were both panelists on a panel podcast together, and he was a music student and I was looking for a composer. We started talking shop and we struck up a partnership that's been going now for 8 years, and it's a fantastic working relationship, and we work together anytime we have a chance. And we made a good licensing deal that has kept both of us very happy over the years, so never underestimate the power of personal connections and of really understanding the needs of the person you're doing a licensing deal with to help make the deal economical and useful for all parties. And after that, there's 2 more ways to do things. Number 1 is to custom stage covers for your books. This would be setting up a photographic session and getting specific shots that you want to use on your book covers, that you either then own directly because you took the pictures, or you license it from the photographer directly, and probably on an exclusive basis, or at least exclusive as far as book covers are concerned. Yeah, and that can be anywhere from very cheap to very expensive, depending on how you do it and how you work the deals with the models and with stuff like that. The final source that's useful, depending on the genre you're in, is government photography. In the United States, at least, everything the government does is in the public domain, free for commercial use by anybody, at least anybody in the U.S. This means recordings by the Army Band are free to use in your podcast, though sometimes you do have to pay songwriters royalties. That's a whole other ball of wax. But that means Hubble photographs, Martian lander photographs, all sorts of stuff like that is completely free to use. And that can be very, very useful. In fact, on some of the covers I've done, if you look at Nathan Lowell's Share series, all of those are Hubble photographs in the background with custom planets that I did in Blender and GIMP in the foreground. And the new book with the planet in the background and the space station in the foreground, that's a piece of artwork I did up in Blender, de novo from nothing, and just pasted it and then just dropped a starfield from a NASA satellite in the background just to make sure the background had texture. My book, The Resurrection Junket, is a collage of 5 different elements. There's 3 photographs from Curiosity and Opportunity, the Martian landers, that have been cobbled together and photo-processed in such a way to create the appearance of a snowy, bleak alien landscape. Those are combined with a artificially generated starfield in the far background. I guess it's 6 elements. And then there's the DNA chain coming down from the sky and impacting the ground with a lens flare. That I all put together. I modeled the DNA chain in Blender, rendered it out, and put that together with the lens flare in GIMP. And then there is the woman walking away from or toward the lens flare. And she is a line drawing cutout that Kitty Nakian did, and her shadow is just a processing of that line drawing cutout with some warpage to match the terrain. And then we also drew in, just painted in a couple foot marks and whatnot, so it looked like there were footprints going on. That whole thing is a collage, but it doesn't look like a collage. That looks like an honest-to-goodness painting of an alien landscape. So never underestimate the power of pixel pushing. Learn your pixel pushers, and they will make any raw materials you get your hands on much, much better. It's an extensive learning curve like any art form, just like writing. It takes a while to learn the tools, and then it takes a while to be able to use the tools well in a creative way. But that's a very good set of skills to learn, if for no other reason than you can then better manage artists that you hire. And that's the final way that you can do this. You can actually hire cover design done. The entire cover, not just the artwork. From places like Fiverr and Lucky Bat and whatnot. And the people you hire out, they will find the artwork for you and marry it to the typeface and do the photo processing and that sort of thing. So that's another option. So there you go, ranging from free to a few $100s a cover. That's how you find cover art for your books. I hope that helps, and I'll see you tomorrow. NaNoWriMo Every Month is written and presented by J. Daniel Sawyer and produced by Artistic Whispers Productions. Visit our website at nanowrimoeverymonth.com and leave a tip in the tip jar or join the Patreon to support this podcast. NaNoWriMo Every Month is copyright 2016 by J. Daniel Sawyer and Artistic Whispers Productions and is released under a Creative Commons Non-Commercial Attribution No Derivatives license.